Hi guys, it's Misty from the Book Rat, and today I have another Austen and August post for you. So if you've been following me on Twitter, especially for the 30-day book binge, you'll know that I decided I wanted to reread one Abigail Reynolds book to get me in the mood for Austen and August. And then it sort of turned into a whole month of reading Abigail Reynolds, so I picked 3 of the books that I read in July. There were actually more than this, and I am still kind of craving more Abigail Reynolds books, so there will be more to come. But right now I'm going to be talking about 3 books by Abigail Reynolds, 2 of which are part of her Pride and Prejudice variation series, and one which is a modern retelling. And I'm going to give you kind of individual thoughts and my overall thoughts. So all 3 books will be listed and linked and have the full synopsis in the description, so you can find out more about them there, but I'm going to get straight into it so this video isn't endless. So this is 3 by Abigail Reynolds. So the first is called By Force of Instinct, and though I had read this one, I could not for the life of me remember what it was about, and now having reread it when I sat down to record this video, and keep in mind it's been less than a month, I still, for the life of me, could not remember what it was about. I don't know what it is about this book. I don't know if it just kind of blends in with the others too much, but for whatever reason, I just struggle to remember what happened in this one, whether I liked it, whether I found the characterization good. I actually had to go back and skim this one and read some reviews of it to even remember what it was I wanted to say. So that's not ideal, obviously, but that said, I think I tended to like it more than a lot of the reviews that I read. So the consensus seems to be first half great, second half not. And I can get where people are coming from with that. The first half, God, what the fuck is this book about again? What is this book about? I just read the synopsis like 5 minutes ago and I don't remember exactly. I believe after Darcy proposes, rather than leaving Lizzie's presence, he's forced to kind of stick around, and they have to deal with the awkwardness. And I think people tended to like that, and understandably so. It's an interesting, unique take on the story. It maybe lessens the credibility a little bit because Darcy going away and kind of dwelling on things for a while, processing the anger, and then processing maybe ways in which she was right and ways in which he's not been presenting himself to the best, and working on that, working to change on that over a long period of time is much more believable than changing kind of quickly, and it gives you more confidence in a future that they might have together, because if he can change that quickly when they're face to face, then maybe he'll change back, you know, just revert to his old ways really quickly as well. So in some ways it's still a little bit dicey, but I mean, you always have to kind of pick something and go with it in an Austen variation, and I think for things to go with, it is an interesting take, and the awkwardness and the kind of self-recriminations are nice because they're like, they both have screwed up, you know, and they're having to deal with the consequences of that. So I can understand why people felt the first half of the book is stronger. The second half, I still didn't entirely mind. I think it is a little out there for who they are, who the characters are, but again, I think if you're going to pick something and go with it, I can kind of understand. So a lot of people seem to have a problem with the steaminess and the, I guess, the level of impropriety, the flagrant flouting of society's rules. Found Lizzie a little hypocritical and found their behavior just ridiculous for who they are, and I get that. Of course they wouldn't do the things that they do. This doesn't bother me for a couple of reasons. Number one, sometimes you just want a little bit of steaminess in your Jane Austen retelling. I mean, and if you're gonna get it pre-marriage, it's always gonna be a little bit questionable. Number two, I think it can a little bit be explained away based on actual bits of the original text. So Lizzie saying something like her courage always rises with attempts to intimidate her, it makes sense that if she's put in a situation where she doesn't respect the authority figures around her, she doesn't respect society and society's rules, you can kind of see her being a little bit willful and wanting to do what she wants to do and saying, screw it. Now, of course, this still leaves her open to some arguments of people saying, well, the things that she does, beyond just being hypocritical, really put her and her sisters and her family in danger for the rest of their lives, because if none of them marries well, then they could be put on the streets. They could have to resort to some really horrible things just to survive. And that is true. Again, I think it is a little bit supported by the text, though. Lizzie has the opportunity to make sure that her sisters and her family are taken care of, and she denies Collins, and she denies Darcy, who could just set them up, all of them, for life. And she chooses not to satisfy herself. So, I mean, I think it's an extreme version, but I think that it is supported in her character and who she is. So I didn't dislike it in the way that a lot of people do. But as I said, I keep forgetting it. So there must be something that is a little bit off for me. The second one that I read, and again, this was a reread, is Mr. Darcy's Noble Connections. No, I don't want to shut my Kindle down. Why? Why for you do that? Mr. Darcy's Noble Connections. Now this one kind of takes a what-if path of the whole you can't have always been at Longbourn thing that Darcy says to Lizzie. She has her own noble connections. She has a wealthy family that she has spent part of her life with and stayed with, and she goes to stay with them again. And they've kind of molded who she is, and that's why she's set apart a little bit from her family. Turns out her noble connections are also connections of Darcy's in some way, which brings them together. This one has a lot of controversy in it as well, scandal and whatnot. I didn't look at reviews for this one because this one I remember well, even before I had reread it. I remembered it well. I'm sure it's gonna bother some people. It's gonna get under some people's skin because there is a lot of not just falling into scandal, but outright courting scandal. There are characters in this and decisions that are made that are meant to cause a scandal and are meant to really be a thorn in the side of society. So if you're a traditionalist, it might bother you. It also deals a lot with the kind of rake type of character and the ways in which women could be compromised and taken advantage of and outright hurt, you know, for someone else's amusement. So it's gonna probably make some people uncomfortable, and seeing some of these people and trying to sympathize with them in spite of the things that they do or are thought to have done or thought to be the type of character to do certain things, it's really probably going to put some people off, and I get that. Again, I kind of approach these variations as how true are they to the original story, but also how true are they to the variation that's being written, and I think for me it works on that level. It is a different Darcy and Lizzie than you're used to seeing, and I kind of don't like the idea that the reason Lizzie is different and is acceptable to Darcy is because of her noble connections and this, you know, extra leg up in life that she's had as a result. It lessens who she is, I think, a little bit, because it just makes her a product of her environment that is well-to-do enough and classed up enough for Darcy, and it just kind of lessens the romance, I think, of it and the strength of character of it. But that said, I think it is an interesting story. It introduces some interesting characters that of course are not in the original, and deals a lot more with class and with some of the unsavory bits of Regency life in extreme ways, but in interesting ways. And it leans more a little bit towards like a Harlequin Regency romance rather than, you know, an Austen retelling. But I'm not necessarily opposed to that. If you are, then this might not be the book for you. It is scandalous, but it's got some good tension in it that I really enjoyed. The final book is a modern one, and that is The Man Who Loved Pride and Prejudice, which is set in the Cape Cod area and deals with marine biology, and I am of mixed emotions on this one. So basically, the modern aspects, like the marine biology, I really like. I love when an author takes something that they are passionate about and uses it in a retelling, because you can tell that the knowledge is there and the passion is there, and it adds just a great layer, rather than just something that they did scant amount of research on and then just sprinkled in to say like, oh yeah, it's about this. You can tell when it's something that someone cares about, and Abigail Reynolds actually did study marine biology, so that foundation of knowledge is there. I also think that it is an interesting play on the themes of Pride and Prejudice and the characters. It's a good kind of transition into a modern story. That said, and this is something that I've noticed through all of the books, there's a bit of a robbing of tension in the buildup of the romance. The great thing about Pride and Prejudice is that love-to-hate dynamic, and the sort of willful misunderstandings of each other, and the way they keep just like sticking their foot in their mouth. You know, there's a lot of great tension that you have to just let it build and build and build, and then they finally have their breakthroughs. Instant attraction on both of their parts doesn't really work for that dynamic. To have one really attracted and the two misunderstanding each other, and so you're kind of getting two levels of a story where he's seeing it one way, she's seeing everything another way, and you've got that dramatic irony as the viewer, the reader, just works so well. It's part of what makes Pride and Prejudice so great. So when you have a real, like, sizzling attraction between the two, and circumstances are keeping them apart rather than their own misunderstandings, it kind of loses what makes Pride and Prejudice so great. And I think all three books suffered from that a little bit. This one maybe more so than the others, because I feel like, other than the main character Cassie being a little bit of a bitch, honestly, causing the problems on her own and the misunderstandings of each other, with his aloofness playing in just a little bit, for the most part they do fall into their chemistry and their relationship very, very quickly. And then things come along and it kind of throws a wrench in everything. And I still do like it. I like how things play out. I like the wealth and politics and science aspects of it quite a bit, actually. It's just, I want more tension, and I've been saying this a lot this year about any romances that I've read, whether they are straightforward romances or whether the romance is a subplot. Too often I feel like the anticipation is just dashed. Like, where is that? That used to be the hallmark of good romance. That used to be what made you have your butterflies, is the will they, won't they, and the getting there, the building it up. And now it just seems to be there. It's just handed out. It just isn't the same. So even though I did like all three, that's kind of the big drawback for me. So I know other people had other drawbacks with all of these. They are all very steamy. Putting that out there. If you don't like the steaminess in your Austen, probably pass. You know, other people had other issues, propriety issues, and I get those. I don't really care about them as much. I just want a lot of torturous anticipation. That's what I want. I want the characters to be tortured a little bit. I want to be tortured a little bit as the reader. That's all I'm asking for. But I would still recommend all three if they are your type of approach to Austen, or if you like those slightly tawdry Harlequin romances. But that is my thoughts on three books by Abigail Reynolds. You'll probably be seeing more soon. Definitely more next year, if I can remember to review them before I forget what they're about, because I think I've read at least 6, and I keep, like, there are a lot available online for my library, but I can't check any of them out because I owe the library money, and it's just eating at me because I want to read all of the Abigail Reynolds things, just all. And I mean, that speaks pretty highly, I guess. But yeah, those are my thoughts. So as I said, you can find all the books listed and linked below. If you've read any of them, especially if you were one of those that really just was bothered by any of them, definitely let me know your thoughts in the comments. If you've read others by her or similar ones that you would like to recommend, I would love to hear about them. But that is all for now. Thank you guys for watching, and as always, happy reading!